All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Talkin Investing. Bitcoin went down today all day, but some of the Bitcoin miners did okay. So we're going to talk about all that. We have a long list of things to talk about. Most of the Bitcoin miners have put out their monthly operational reports. One Bitcoin miner put out their quarterly earnings report, and we're going to go through that. I think it was a home run, but we'll see what you guys think. Hello, George.
No hello.
You're not feeling it?
No. I'm looking forward to that full moon, I'll tell you that.
Next week.
Yep, next week. Next week, Tommy. It's going to be different.
Well, the altcoins, we're going to go through that. All the altcoins took a big hit. You know, everything happens later than, you know, if everything happened exactly like we all thought it was going to happen, then everybody in the world would be rich. And that's just not how it works. These guys with a lot of money, they know what they're doing and they know what we're doing. So I would just, you know, from my perspective, I'm trying to have patience. I'm doing all the due diligence I can do. But I still feel like the best is ahead. Having said that, I mean, we're going to look at the 15-minute chart. You can see it was basically mostly red lines. Right as the market opened, we were, and then I'm going to get to midway in just 1 second. You know, right as this was the opening of the U.S. equity markets today. So that was the peak of the day. We got over 100,000, and then it was just down all day. Now, a couple of the Bitcoin miners bucked that trend. In fact, more than half of the Bitcoin miners were in the green today. So I think it was a decent week for the Bitcoin miners. I think it was a good day for the Bitcoin miners, a couple in particular. And I still do think we're headed in the right direction as Bitcoin kind of meanders around this $95,000 to $100,000 range. And I'll get to Jeff in just a second too. So let me get to a couple super chats. Midway, thank you very much for the super chat and thanks for being a member. Billionaire tech entrepreneur investor Andrew Wilkinson posted on Twitter about how he's investing in IRON. He thinks IRON deserves a $20 billion to $40 billion enterprise value based on the AI stuff. So there's, you know, on our members only, we were talking about what are we expecting these stocks to do from here? 2x, 3x, 5x, 10x. So, you know, that's a 10x from here. And so, you know, that's stuff like that is encouraging to hear, but they're not just going to give it to us. We're going to have to pay through pain and suffering. Which, go ahead, George.
So I just went to bring up on the other monitor your stream.
Yes.
And it doesn't even show that it's live. When I clicked on it, it showed it's live, but it doesn't even show the notification that it's live.
Well, that is an outrage.
Isn't that crazy? So there's this like little bar thing, like, you know, 6 little digits, and I find that interesting.
Well, let's see what's going on. Well, first of all, okay, so that brings up a good point. If everybody could please do us a giant favor and smash the like button, that will help promote the stream live. So let's get some people on here live. For those of you who are watching this at a later date or time, welcome. For those of you who are live, thanks for being here. We got 14 likes. We're going for 100 likes and then 200 likes. We've been getting that 100 every single week. And after hours, we've been getting the 200 and then some. So do us a huge favor. It does help. We got to keep people interested in these Bitcoin miners. There's a lot going on. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to go through CleanSpark had their earnings. You're going to see more of this. CleanSpark, in my opinion, knocked it out of the park as expected. And, you know, they ended the day up 9%. At one point, they were up 16 or 17% on the day. And, of course, Bitcoin, you know, fell all day long. So all the miners pulled back a little bit, with the exception of IRON, which continued to pick up steam all day. They finished up 7.5%. So,
I'm afraid to look, Tom.
Well, yeah, if you're afraid to look, then I wouldn't look. Jeff.
Yeah, I won't even look. I won't log in, guys. I won't.
Oh, Jeff is giving us our from time to time reminder. Thank you, Jeff, for the super chat. The supermarkets are running again. SFM and KR. So Jeff's been telling us about the supermarkets for a couple years. It's been a fantastic play. So welcome, Jeff. And then thank you again, Jeff. And Jeff said, Cleanspark to the moon. And I think, and we're going to look at the Cleanspark results. We're going to look at the Cleanspark chart. So more of that to come. And I do think Cleanspark's going to have a breakout. And I think there's other companies that are going to be reporting over the next weeks and months that are going to start to break out. This, to me, this is the time. So we've been waiting and waiting and waiting. But I do think the next 90 days are crucial for the Bitcoin miners. And I think we're going to see some breaks to the upside. Cleanspark was over $12 at one point today. Now, Bitcoin just went down in a straight line all day, and that pulled things back a little. But, you know, you've got three companies that are hanging around that $11 or $12 mark, which is Cleanspark, Iron, and Riot. And all of those companies, to me, are just none of those companies belong in that price range. Iron's been on a tear. We'll go through that too. They were up 7.5% today. They've been on fire recently. This whole week they were. Alexander said, I bought my last stash of Cleanspark shares just before earnings. So good call. That paid off. Somebody saying, I've been patient for years. I mean, here's the thing. Depending on what you're doing, if you've been patient for years, from the bottom, I have this chart. I'm going to go to this chart. We'll get back to this one in a second. But I'm going to go. So from the bottom, and for most of these Bitcoin miners, this was December of 2022. And so from that point until now, so from the bottom of the previous cycle until today, this says 2.4, it should say 2.7. You're going to see, I mean, most of the Bitcoin miners, even the ones that are, so you got Bitcoin up 520% from the bottom, which, by the way, is almost exactly where it was in the last couple of cycles at this point. So we're going to look and see Bitcoin's acting pretty similarly as of today. It did run early, and we had a long period of sideways consolidation. That was a little different, but sitting right here right now, all right, this is pretty similar to previous cycles. You know, we have four that are lagging a little bit behind. I'm looking for these four to move. We have Cleanspark, which just this week passed Bitcoin from the bottom. They're up 551%. So, you know, for those of you who have been doing this for a long time, a lot of people are way up on these stocks. I know also a lot of people have lost a lot of money on these stocks. It depends when you got in and when you got out. But there was monumental buying opportunities. And, you know, Cypher's up 1,400%. Iron's up over 1,000%. This is basically in the last 2 years. TerraWolf up 840%. I mean, so, you know, it just depends when you get in and when you get out. And this is the hard part. And that's why I say patience, because, you know, if you were in this space for long enough and you were dollar cost averaging in when Bitfarms was at 40 cents and Cleanspark was at $2 and Riot was at $3, I mean, then, you know, your portfolio is okay right now. But I mean, I know, I understand. There's also been a lot of people that have gotten wrecked, and that's what the big money does to us. So, you know, they just keep finding a way to make people panic sell. And
Tom, did you see that comment from S?
S, thank you for the super chat. S said,
I can't do it.
George, sell your XRP.
I can't do it.
So we'll talk some altcoins too, but I actually think it's time to start dollar cost averaging into the altcoins.
Well, that's what I just did the last few days.
Yeah, I think there was a big fake out. Everybody over a 3 or 4 month period was saying we're at the edge of altcoin season. It's almost here. It's almost here. And then a bunch of them ran and everybody thought it was altcoin season, but it wasn't. So we're getting a big pullback. This is, I think, You know, only time will tell. I think we're going to look back at this pullback and say, wow, look at what they did for us. What a giant buying opportunity in the middle there. So, you know, that's what's happened in previous cycles. We'll see if this one does the same thing. All right, we're at 39 likes. We need people to please hit the like button if you would be so kind. If you just got here or if you've been here and you haven't hit the like button, it does help the live stream out in real time. And like George says, they don't like to show our live stream to people. So hitting the like button does help. And thank you, everybody in the chat section as well. That helps. Miner Deegan, thank you for being a member, and thank you for the super chat. Tom, we're all expecting a repeat of 2021, but the macro environment was completely different then. Low rates, quantitative easing, DXY in the 90s, and that is very different than we have right now. So I don't disagree with anything that you're saying, Miner Deegan. I don't think that that's going to rule the day, though. I think Bitcoin's going to make its run. I think you're going to we're already getting the M2 money supplies at an all-time high. I think you're going to see more quantitative easing and more rate hikes than everybody is talking about right now. They may come a little later. Jerome Powell and the Fed are being very stubborn, but I think ultimately we're going to see a little bit of this. And the DXY, whereas for a long time, there was just that almost precise inverse relationship between the DXY and Bitcoin. That has really, if you look over the last several months, that has broken. The DXY, which is ultra high right now. I mean, it's, you know, at 20 or 30 year highs, and that is the measure of the dollar against other currencies. The dollar keeps getting stronger because the Fed is being so stubborn now because of tariffs, et cetera, et cetera. We'll talk tariffs. I don't think most of these tariffs are ever going to happen. I think they're a negotiating tool, so I don't think those are going to end up. I think the dollar will pull back as a result of that. But regardless of that, even if all those things don't go the way they went last time, I think Bitcoin's still going to take its run. I haven't seen anybody out there say they've lost their confidence that the Bitcoin bull market is still ahead of us. So should we make that our first poll and then
there's one person midway. George, do you have an opinion on XLM Stellar? I've noticed that investors in XRP often like XLM2, but I don't know much about it. I do like XLM, but they got hacked. That was my only problem, but supposedly it is fixed. I think it will be, it's an ISO 222, so I'm in it because of that. I was actually thinking of making a crypto that has ISO 222. Isn't that funny? And nothing else, just those cryptos.
So it does seem like, you know, midway, it does seem like XRP holders, there's a relationship, and is it just simply what you just said, George? I mean, it seems like XRP and XLM are linked.
No, they're not.
I mean, I don't mean literally linked. I just mean those who invest in XRP, it seems like they tend to invest in XLM as well.
I've made good money on XLM, but I've just been getting in and getting out. It went up and then I just got out again and just got back in, matter of fact. I've just been using it as a swing trade. But my XRP, I didn't think I'd buy more XRP, and it went back down below $2, and I just went nuts. Either I'm going to be successful at this, or I'll be working at Walmart. Does that make sense?
Well, let's hope that goes the right way.
Yeah, I mean, I went nuts on it. I mean, I cannot believe, I think the full moon's going to be when we take off.
Which is when?
Wednesday of this coming week. I think it's just about time for us to see a nice pump. Because, I'm sorry, with CleanSpark and their earnings, and then Marathon and their earnings,
we're going to get we're going to get a bunch of earnings reports. We're also going to talk about Microstrategy's earnings and what they did this quarter and what they're going to have to do next quarter. But they seem to be okay, and I'd like to see everybody's feelings on Microstrategy right now, who has now rebranded themselves to Strategy. So their stock ticker remains the same, but they have rolled out a rebrand. They are not MicroStrategy anymore. They're Strategy. So for whatever that's worth. And they lost a fortune, but it was all on paper. And it's all because they didn't adopt. They are waiting till the last possible moment to adopt the FASB accounting changes. So MicroStrategy to 20K is saying buy and hold MicroStrategy. Future earnings will be driven by FASB accounting changes. For 2025, expect super earnings and stock splits. So they intentionally didn't. This was the last chance to not adopt the change. So they didn't adopt it. So instead of making a fortune, but they did forecast, I think they said they're forecasting making like $10 trillion this year. So whereas they lost a bunch of money in the quarter they just reported, they're going to have to switch. And they said they are going to switch. We'll look at that next quarter. And you're going to see a very different picture at that point for sure. Midway One saying, yeah, Iron's earnings might be really good. And as a non-FASB miner. So Iron's earnings, I think, and let's see. They're announcing. So they're February 12th. Next week, Wednesday after the market close, Iron is going to put out their earnings. And yes, when you look, I mean, they're telling us what their earnings are going to look like in their monthly operational reports. Their monthly operational reports disclose a lot. I've looked at their previous financial statements to kind of get a concept of what their overhead is and what their depreciation is. So I expect them to have earnings, and I expect that to be a good earnings report. Now, they are pumping right now, so I don't know if it's going to be one of those things where it's running ahead of earnings and it'll be a sell the news. We're going to have to figure that out when we get there, but Iron had the stock had a fantastic week. They had a very good January report. We'll look at that as well. Just basically as expected. I see a lot of people talking MicroStrategy. So let's just ask real quick, because, I mean, the bottom line, let's just start with the simplest question we can. Do we think the Bitcoin bull market is over? Because there's people out there, obviously, that, there's a million different points of view. It was not very long ago. I think last week we just hit a new all-time high at 109 and change. The things that I'm seeing, the majority of people I'm seeing say the exact opposite. They think we have a long way to go in this bull market. That doesn't mean they're right. Everybody can be wrong. In fact, when everybody agrees, that's oftentimes a red flag to be a little bit nervous about what's going on. Midway's saying Morrow looks like an imminent short squeeze. So there's a very big short position in Marathon. Their January report disappointed some people. They still mined more Bitcoin than anybody. The companies that are in Texas and in certain areas are going to have some curtailment in these months. The companies that are in Canada are going to have some curtailment in these months. So the month over month, they went down a little bit more than their competitors. But we're going to look at that chart. It wasn't a big difference. I think they're doing just fine. They didn't add any exahash in January, but they're at 53 exahash. They're so far. CleanSpark just cleared 40 exahash. That is second place by a mile. So, you've got two companies that have broken away from the pack. You've got two other ones that are fighting, I think, to get to that spot, which is Riot and Iron. Those four companies have really split themselves from the group. We'll see if somebody else can jump in to that group. But for the time being, that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 for a long time. You know, months, many months, if not all year, unless somebody can make a big move. And there are a lot of companies that have some big growth plans up to, you know, 25 exahash, 35 exahash. But, you know, CleanSpark's already at 40. They're looking to get to 50 by the middle of the year. And Marathon's already at 50, above 50. They're not giving a lot of guidance on where they're going. They're just doing. So I don't know what that strategy is. I think, you know, they had a big problem several years back, 2022, early 2023, where, you know, they were talking about growth plans and it wasn't happening. They missed the mark by a mile. And so maybe they just decided they're not gonna talk about it anymore. They're just gonna do it. And they've been doing it. I mean, they're at 53 exahash. They mine more than everybody, and it's not close. Sourmelon Gaming looks like a high of 110K in 2025. Everyone's, quote, buying the coin, but the price goes down. The algorithm is inaccurate and slated in the downward position. Sourmelon Gaming, I see you. I definitely, this is a couple of weeks now. I feel like you're feeling very, very pessimistic about what's to come. So I don't know. I'm not feeling that way. But I get a sense and I understand. And I think, listen, your sentiment, I think, is a much more popular sentiment than mine. A lot of people have already left this space. A lot of people are pondering leaving the Bitcoin miner space. But I think we'll do another poll, and we're looking at the current poll. Let's see. If you're on a device where you can vote, let's get some votes in. But we're at 91% think the Bitcoin bull market is not over. We're going to hit higher highs. So we'll ask the next question, which is how high?
I don't think it's over with.
I'm just going to type for a second.
Oh, and the other reason I won't get out of my XRP, I figured I'll take the run if it goes back up. And Brent said something, but he left, so I didn't really answer him. You know, that XRP hasn't been at its highest since 2015, which was $3.91. And I said, yes, I agree. But the problem is its adoption. And my whole thing is, when whatever that name of that guy was that works at the U.S. Treasury now said, we're going to tokenize everything. Those were what he said. He says, we're going to tokenize whatever that means. I don't know what that means.
That person predicted we'll have $30 trillion of things tokenized by 2030.
So whoever that person is, I don't know who that person, I don't know his name. I think it might be Scott something or another. But I believe him because I don't know if anybody really wants to know what I think.
And it's almost we want to know what you think, George. I want to know.
It's almost to the point where I don't think it anymore. It's like I know it.
Feel it in your bones.
I feel it in my bones, yeah. And that is when you see what has happened with, let's just say, U.S. aid, which I'm sure just killed the stream.
You just knocked us out.
That they're going to say that we have to do something differently. And I think the dollar will get destroyed. And at that point in time, I think something else is going to come into play.
Well, we've seen some things line up with XRP. They're lining up with some of the banking rules and regulations. And it looks to me like they're trying to cooperate with whatever regulations are coming so that their adoption continues to grow. So I'm actually with George, and we are not alone. I mean, XRP, the more I've seen XRP to 30, XRP to 100 videos out there, and
I've seen XRP to 10,000. Somebody said $100,000.
Yeah, I mean, that like, boggles my mind. They would have to burn the vast majority of them for that to happen. But
Hey,
but they could. I mean, half of them aren't even in circulation. If I
right?
right, I think that's correct.
Yeah, 50 billion.
So those could never get into circulation. I think sentiment around XRP. There's going to be a there. I have this somewhere, but I'll just talk about it. Essentially, several things are happening. There's several companies looking to do XRP ETFs. So,
I think that's got to move the price. I mean,
absolutely,
look at what it did to Bitcoin.
It's just the accessibility. It allows pools of money that would never consider investing in XRP can just go buy an ETF. That's gonna that's definitely gonna impact over time, and it doesn't mean it'll happen instantly, but all of the different things.
Did I lose you?
Nope. Can you hear me?
Yeah. You just cut it. My internet's been terrible lately. And they fixed it. So.
Oh, they did. They came out and fixed it, but it's still not.
Yeah.
Let's see. This is the only XRP article I can find. The right one, but there's a lot of excitement around XRP, and there's a lot of big predictions. So obviously, always be careful. And look what happened as people were making all those videos. XRP, along with all the other altcoins. I'll go there right now. Let's refresh this page. The altcoins had a tough week. If we look, Ethereum down 21%, almost 22% this week. XRP down 21%, Solana down 17%. Even BNB, which tends to not have those big moves up and down 15%. Dogecoin down 25%, Cardano down 25%. I mean, this was a beat down. Chainlink down 20, almost 27%. So this was a big pullback, and this is a lot of times what happens because everybody got excited. There started to be FOMO, and that's when they short-term rug pull. But I don't believe that means alt season is over and or not coming ever. I think this is a buying opportunity. So, not financial advice, as you guys know, but my opinion is these are all like, as somebody who I don't want to say dislikes, but I'm not an Ethereum person at all. But when I see it at $2,500,
so I shouldn't tell you everybody, but I bought 10 because you needed 10 to be on a node, and I got them at 2,700.
I mean, it's hard to pass up.
I know.
Do we think, or do we think Ethereum has failed? Because that's the alternative.
I don't think it's failed. I mean, too many people have it.
So I got two articles. Let's go to this because I actually pulled up two articles about Ethereum. Let's talk Ethereum for a minute. And they're the exact opposite articles. So that just goes to show you. Who knows? Ether may be ready for a bull run as price action mirrors the August bottom. So this goes on to talk about how essentially we're bottoming out. This, fractal pattern is very similar to August. Ether has faced a steep decline of 32%, dropping to 2770. This article was written today, and it's already, down another $150 or $200 from here. So, it's headed in the wrong direction in the short term, but what they're saying is this is the bottoming out process. Options flow suggests bullish expectations. Over-the-counter desks and spot Ether ETFs have seen large inflows this week in a sign of dip demand. So here's one article saying, okay, maybe we're at the bottom here, and maybe this is a buying opportunity. But then here's another article also written today. Ethereum faces, quote, intense competition from other networks. And this, of course, from JP Morgan. The blockchain's native token Ether has underperformed Bitcoin and other altcoins in recent months. The Ethereum blockchain is faced with intense competition. This is where I said I'm rehashing history, and Frank from Hive was pounding the table on this. I don't think they should have ever switched from proof of work to proof of stake. And yes, that's ancient history now. But how's Ether done since they made that switch? First of all, it's a fundamental switch, which to me does not instill confidence in people. And secondly, we saw they showed us they have several massive changes to Ethereum planned over the next couple of years. So I don't like any of that. That's all uncertainty in my mind, and the market doesn't like it. But having said all of that, it is now so beaten down that I'm looking at it going, man, under 2,600? Come on. Even if Ethereum doesn't do well, I believe it'll get back to its previous all-time high. Right, that would be a failure for this bull market. If all Ethereum did was get back to its previous all-time high, you would say that's a failure. But if we look at that...
I don't know if you heard about this where they have... I don't know exactly what happened, but they figured out how... what's his name? Vladimir?
Oh, Vitaly. I'll pronounce his last name wrong, but you guys know who we're talking about.
Somebody caught him doing a pump and dump with $400 million way back in 2018, because they ran it through AI, and they said and they were able to run the program through it and figure out what he did. So I wonder if that's what's affecting it.
I don't know. You can see this. I mean, look at this weekly candle. This got down to 2,100, and remember, everything flash crashed when the everybody thought tariffs are kicking in tomorrow, and the entire crypto universe flash crashed early in the week, and the entire stock market flash crashed on Monday. So that would have been your moment to pick. You could have picked Ethereum up for $2,150. So, but that window was 5 minutes. George and I were on the phone talking when it happened. I mean, that window closed quickly. So this candle wick happened in a super short period of time. But it's still at a very low place. And my point of all this is, in the last cycle, Ethereum got to 4,867. I mean, just to get back to where it was, which, again, Bitcoin's already blown way past where it was, right? Getting back to your previous cycle would be considered an absolute failure for any altcoin, particularly Ethereum. And they need to go up almost 90% just to get back to where they got last time. So there could be a big run ahead in this, even though, like I said, I don't own any. I'm not a fan, but at these prices, I'm starting to, I'm starting to look interested at this.
That's funny. You didn't even know I bought any.
No, I had no idea. But so there you go. I mean, this to me, this is a buying price. You've got Bitcoin still over 30,000, well, around $30,000 above its high from the previous cycle. We feel like, oh man, Bitcoin's under 96,000. Well, last time around it only got to 69,000. So Bitcoin's already blown way by that. Ethereum's not even in the neighborhood. It did get up to 4,000, and you could argue, well, is this, did this double top and that was the end for Ethereum? I don't think so. You could set up a whole double top pattern here with a neckline somewhere around here and say, well, Ethereum's in trouble, it's going to crash. I just don't think that's the case. That's just one piece of off-the-cuff technical analysis. I think it's more likely that Ethereum goes back and recaptures its previous all-time high. That is my opinion. Let's see what people think Bitcoin's going to do. There's 12% of people that think 110K, which is basically we got to 109. They think that's it. $150,000. That seems to be the majority. Well, not a majority, but that seems to be the biggest. 42%, 200,000, 35% of you think we're going to get to 200,000 in this bull market cycle, which I said, somewhere in the 2025, 2026. If it really extends out, it'll go into 2026. A lot of people are talking about that. And 13% think we're going to get to 250,000 or more. And we have seen and talked on this channel about predictions from very high profile people. We saw a $352,000 prediction, a $590,000 prediction. We saw $1 million prediction. So, obviously none of those people know the future, but the point is there's an awful lot of optimism that this bull run, this bull market has a lot of room left in it. And I agree with that. And we are doing some consolidating, but we ran, we look at the 1 day, we're starting to have a pretty big period of consolidation here. Right? That's yes, we hit a new high twice in this cycle, but we've been trading, between basically 90,000 and 110,000. This goes back November, December, January. So we're 90 days into this, and that is super typical. We've seen this happen many, many times, these periods of consolidation inside of a bull market, and I think the next move is usually up. Right? We just saw, look at this. That was from February of 2024 until November of 2024. That was that 7 months of just brutal kind of sideways with a bias to the downside period of time where it looked like, and that was Bitcoin ran up to 73,000. So we were bouncing, as low as almost 48,000 on this one candle wick here. But, between 55 and 70,000, we were bouncing back and forth and back and forth. And what happens all at once? We have this gigantic move. Oh, sorry. We have a gigantic move to the upside. And now we're getting some consolidation again. So I think this is how a healthy bull market works. The Bitcoin miners. So let's look at what the Bitcoin miners have done. Let's look at this week, year to date, etc. And Andrew's saying this is playing out like the 2017 cycle, not the 2021 cycle. So that's a very good point, Andrew. Let me see if I thought I saved an article that talked about that. Okay. Bitcoin's still following previous cycles' trajectory. So they show this. The black line is this cycle right now. The blue line on here is just what Andrew's talking about. That's the 2017 cycle. So you can see, obviously these lines don't exactly overlap, but we're having very similar price action. And what comes next, or what came next in 2017, was a huge move to the upside. So that's why I'm saying I think the next 90 days are important. I think that if we're going to follow along, this is about when we should get a big move to the upside. And by the way, even in 2021, we hit 64,000 when? Like March? Right? We kind of double topped in the last cycle. Right. Low. Yeah, in April of 2021, we hit 65,000. So we had a 50% pullback from April of 2021 until we ultimately topped out at 69,000. Bitcoin had a 50% pullback in the middle. So there can be volatility. And you see, here's another, this was a 30-something% pullback, and then boom, off to the races. So I just think there's a long way to go. I think we are following previous patterns like Andrew pointed out and like that article was pointing out. And it should be that, the next move, and that doesn't mean tomorrow. That means in the, the next 1 or 2 or 3 months, the next move big move should be to the upside, in my opinion. Starmelon Gaming saying, we need to start getting paid for the risk we're taking. These companies have been getting risk-free money for years now from us, and investors are left with minimal returns. So I agree with that, Sourmelon Gaming, but I will also tell you, I think you're seeing a shift. I think at long last, first of all, these companies had to gear up for the halving, and a lot of them were doing two things. They were increasing their exahash for the halving, and I have a chart of how much just some of these companies, how much they increased, which was massive increases. But in addition to that, a lot of these companies were getting vertically integrated so that they were, becoming closer to the source of the power and the infrastructure, and that was costly. But that's a one-time cost, right? For Riot to build themselves out to 2 gigahertz, they're not going to have to, at the next halving, whereas they may have to replace a lot of their machines, they're not going to have to replace their infrastructure that they just borrowed billions of dollars to build out. So this time around, there was massive stock dilution. There was investor exhaustion. George has been pounding the table on that for a year. It's just the dilution is exhausting. But I do think we saw a switch. We had 6 different companies do convertible debt in the last 90 days instead of, an at-the-market offering. They did some convertible debt due out 5, 6, 7 years from now. So I think that's a step in the right direction. And we've had 2 different companies. Cleanspark came straight out and said, we got the money we need. Our at-the-market offering is closed, and we're not opening another one. And now, just to be clear, that didn't say they're never going to open another one, but they have no short-term intentions to open another one. So I think you've got Cleanspark who realizes, yes, but Cleanspark tripled or quadrupled in size in the period of time that their stock didn't even double. So, yes, it was a lot of dilution. It was exhausting. It's one of the reasons the prices aren't necessarily where they should be yet, but I think you're going to see a lot less dilution. I think that portion of the program is over. It doesn't mean there'll be zero, but I do think this will be a part of the run where these companies want to show profitability, which they're going to start showing. Cleanspark they made, several $100 million in the quarter they just reported. So you're going to start to see more of that type of activity versus, with Bitcoin where it was, these companies were losing money. They were diluting themselves, all the wrong things. But I think we've entered the next phase. We'll see what happens. Midway, thank you very much. Much appreciated. Super chat. And of course, thanks for being a member. This went under the radar, but BitDeer bought a power plant in Canada, a 1 gigawatt site. So if they fill it with 6.5 joules per terahash seal miners in late 2026, they can get 150 exahash just from that one site. So BitDeer can become the #1 biggest miner. So thank you for pointing that out, Midway, because yeah, they put out a press release and, we touched on it briefly here, but it hasn't got, and, a lot of times because they talked about it's going to be late 2026, everybody's more in a what can you do for me right this second? I want to double or 2x, 3x, 5x today, tomorrow. We're living in a hyper speed society, but I do think there is an awful lot to be said for. There's 2 or 3 companies that seem like they're gearing up for the next halving. They're also gearing up for the next round of technology. Now, BitDeer makes their own machines, and yeah, their Seal 4, they're talking about 6.5 joules per terahash. I mean, most companies are over 20 joules per terahash right now. 20 is really efficient in today's market. But 4 years from now, that's not going to be the case. So, if they do what you're talking about, that's going to give them a big leg up. And, I think you're going to see the whole network grow a lot, and a lot of people are going to have to replace a lot of machines again. So, but like I said, they won't have to replace their infrastructure. So, BitDeer just bought a 1 gigawatt site. They get that site. They don't have to replace that in the next halving. They've got it. So they're creating long-term value in that, in my opinion. And most of the Bitcoin miners are following this formula, the big ones. You know, the top 5, 6, 7. And I think that may be where we're at next time around. 5 or 6 or 7 of these. We'll see what happens. Let's close out this poll. So 45% think we're going to get to 200,000 or more. That's combining these two. 41% think we're going to get to 150,000, and 15% think we're done. 110,000 is the end of the road. I will tell you, I think we're going to get somewhere between 150 and 200,000. I changed my price target for a year and a half. I thought we were going to get to 150, and then maybe a month ago I changed that to 175,000 based on the things that have unfolded over that period of time. So that's obviously just one personal guess, and your guess is as good as mine. Where do you think it's going, George?
To the moon.
To the moon.
I think Bitcoin's going to the moon. I think it really just depends on if they announce a strategic reserve. You know what I mean?
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I got some info on that as well. And yes, I think that will be a big factor. I just want to respond to Jennifer, who's saying I was in a spaces and people said miners can't make money until Bitcoin is at 200,000. So you're going to see, you can look, CleanSpark just put out their financial statements. They made money at Bitcoin, 100,000. And their fleet is very efficient. They're among the more efficient fleets, but their overhead is not the lowest. So I think you're going to see most of the Bitcoin miners in Q1 and Q2 of the calendar year 2024. I think you're going to see most of these companies be profitable, even from Gap. Some of them maybe not in Q1, but in Q2, and especially the ones that hodled are going to make a lot of money. And that's, CleanSpark has 10,000 Bitcoin. So, that is income from operations by Gap measure. So, they crushed it. Their income was higher than their top line. Let's go take a look at that. $162 million quarterly revenue. That's up 120% year over year. $241 million of net income. That's 85 cents earning per share in the quarter. So if they do that all 4 quarters, think about what multiple CleanSpark is trading at when it hangs out at around $10. I mean, this could be a company that makes $3 or $4 a share this year. Is it really a $10 stock, or is it a $20 stock, or a $30 stock? Or some of you might think it's even more than that.
Well, Tom, you know what? Most of these companies that are traded on the stock market don't make money, so that could be the problem.
Well, here's a company that's making money. They're making.
They're like, wait a second.
You're saying, they don't know what to do with it.
Right.
They don't know what to do with themselves. They got a company that makes money.
How would you compare, and I'm being serious when I say this, a company like Apple, Google, one of the top 7, to the Bitcoin miners? Is it just so different? The technology is just so different that they shouldn't have any consideration of a premium from their profits? Or is it because they haven't really made money up until now?
See, I would have the opposite argument. Typically, by the time a company gets as mature and as large as the ones you're talking about, their PE, their PE, anywhere on the low side from 15. Some of these techs are in the 30 PE. Some of them are even higher than that. The tech stocks, the Magnificent Seven in specific, can get a little bit on the high side on the PE, but a 15 PE is very low versus the broad stock market. You're talking about for CleanSpark, maybe them having a 3 price earnings. Nobody has that. And it's usually these smaller high growth companies have astronomical PEs. And the opposite's happening here. So, these are being suppressed right now. And typically when they have the astronomical PEs, they're being overvalued because that's how it's a seesaw. These things go from, a bubble way overvalued, then they crash right during the crypto winter. All of the Bitcoin miners that we followed, which were 19, were down from their peak anywhere from 91 to 99%. I mean, that's catastrophic, but they didn't go out of business. Typically, that's your last stop on the way to going out of business, but that did not happen. They turned around and started to run up again, but I think we're nowhere, in my opinion, nowhere near done. You're looking at a company that just earned 85 cents per share.
Do you think that Bitcoin miners have an opportunity to do what EVs did? Because like EVs numbers were just like stupid, right?
Yeah, there was an EV bubble that was insanity. There was a Bitcoin bubble at the peak of the last, in November of 2021, when Bitcoin hit 69,000. I would argue that the Bitcoin miners were in a little bit of a bubble. Not anything that resembles what the EV companies did early on, but most of those see, here's the difference between the two. Most of those EV companies that were in a monster bubble worth many, many multiples more than these companies. Most of them are out of business now and gone. Half of my EV watch list that I made 4 years ago, half of those companies don't exist anymore. And other than Tesla, there's not one of them that's doing well.
It's so funny, Tommy's bring up Tesla, because how come Tesla made money?
Bitcoin, baby.
You're right. So how can that be? And then you look at your Bitcoin miners and they're terrible.
The money, this is what I'm saying. The question is, do you believe ultimately, we know money rotates.
Right.
Money rotates around the market. Do we believe that the money is going to rotate into the Bitcoin miners when we get that last parabolic part of the Bitcoin bull market? I think as we see, listen, CleanSpark was, it ended up almost 10% today on earnings. And at one point, like I said, it was up 16 or 17%. Earnings matter. I don't know why people had to wait to see it to believe it. Anybody who follows this company knew these were the numbers, right? And they're spectacular. Marginal cost per Bitcoin decreased 6% to $34,000. So Jennifer, go back to Jennifer's comment. There may be some people out there that don't have good energy deals. They don't have their own, they're not vertically integrated. So they're buying energy from somebody who's buying energy from somebody who's buying energy, etc. So that makes a gigantic difference. But what the top 4 or 5 companies have done is they've taken all those people out of the process and they're making their own energy. And in fact, some of them are kicking it back to the grid when under times of stress. And, Riot makes 30, 40, 50 million dollars a year selling energy back to the grid in Texas. So these are much, in my opinion, these are much better companies today than they were 4 years ago. These are real companies with long-term prospects. That doesn't mean they're not going to be highly volatile, because this is a volatile space. So, anybody that's surprised by the volatility, this is how it is. But volatility goes both ways. And so I do think there's a lot more move to the upside. And then at some point, maybe it is time to, these are, I would call them long-term swing trades. Over the 4-year Bitcoin cycle, there's a time to be in these. There's a time to be out of these. There's a time to be accumulating these. I didn't get it quite right in the last 4-year cycle because the hype was so high in September, October, November, December of 2021 that I held on to a lot of stuff that I otherwise probably would have and should have sold. So I had to hold it and dollar cost average in and wait the entire cycle all the way around. So that's what we got to watch. Where's the top of this cycle? Is it going to sneak up on us, Or are we going to recognize and take some profits on these? And again, everyone's not going to be the same. Crypto golfer Tom, tell me you didn't own Nikola. No, I did not, but they were on my watch list. So those are the companies I'm talking about. I mean, there was insanity. It was insanity. These companies were multi-billion-dollar companies with zero revenue. Many of them were billion-dollar plus companies. And remember, that's the size of these Bitcoin miners. 1, 2, 3 billion is where most of these are hanging out at. All the EVs were larger than that, and a lot of them had revenue of zero. Some of them didn't even have a functioning prototype of what they were going to sell. That's a bubble. So this is what I'm saying. There's a lot of room to the upside for these stocks when things run. Catch up on the comments.
Don't you think, Gary, that will flip? Gary said this. Markets don't care about Hodl and FASBA. The three miners with largest holders were the worst performing among 2024 in entire cycle. Don't you think that's going to switch now, Tom, or no?
Thank you, Gary, for writing that, and George, thanks for pointing that out, because I think that is going to be exactly reverse. That was the 2024 story. Several of the Bitcoin miners started putting out press releases. We're moving into the high performance computing / AI. Most of them don't even really have any contracts and have anywhere from insignificant to no revenue from that. Now, there's a few exceptions, right? Core Scientific has billions of dollars of revenue from that. They're a legit player in that space. I think a lot of the Bitcoin miners will become legit players in that space. But for now, anywhere from 90 to 99% of their income is still in Bitcoin. But the ones who talked about AI took off in 2024. The ones that didn't take off in 2024. So, you know, that happened to line up with the fact that really you're talking about four companies. Marathon by far has the most total, and then Riot and then Hut and CleanSpark are about tied at just over 10,000. So those are the four that have big hodl positions. Those companies aren't really, other than Hut 8, which was redefining themselves all year, and it took me a full year to even kind of catch up to what they were doing. The other three companies with big hodls really aren't in the AI space at all. Now, as of very recently, there's a couple of activist investor groups trying to force Riot to get into the AI business. And guess what? From the second that happened, that they put out a press release in response to that they were going to cooperate and open an exploratory committee and look into using some of their, megawatts to do high performance computing / AI, Riot went on a tear. CleanSpark, it took them putting earnings out and showing people what everybody should have already known, which is that they were going to make a lot of money. It's just math. I mean, and it's not that people care about Hodl or FASB. They care about financial performance. So, and you're right. Even the market's even kinder than that. They look at EBITDA, and these companies are killing it from a standpoint of EBITDA, right? They're making more. So if you look, the first thing is CleanSpark, and they talk about it in their press release. This is a rock solid balance sheet. This is a very, very healthy company. You're talking about a company with $1.2 billion in current assets and less than $100 million in current liabilities. So this is very strong footing. Somewhere they do a reconciliation, I believe. So non-GAAP EBITDA, $321.6 million. And by the way, for GAAP purposes, they made net income attributable to common shareholders $241 million. So this is what I'm talking about. And I told everybody, I've been screaming this. The third quarter of 2024, because it was the first full quarter after the halving, and it was before Bitcoin took off up into this $90,000 to $100,000 range. That was the worst quarter that a lot of these companies are ever going to have. And immediately following that was going to be the best quarter these companies have ever had. And CleanSpark's the first one to report, and we're seeing the massive turnaround that's happening, and you're going to get that. So particularly getting back to the ones where we talked about people don't care about Hodl, I think you're going to see the four that Hodl have a phenomenal 2025. That is my opinion.
I hope so.
So somebody's saying that the Hodl and FASB are priced in, but you can see from the stock performance they're not priced in. And we'll go to the chart. Let's go to the chart. This the chart. 2024. So here's the companies that have Hodl. CleanSpark. This was for the year 2024. Bitcoin was up 122%. The companies that have a Hodl position, CleanSpark, 10,000, down 17%. Marathon has over 45,000 Bitcoin. They were down 29% last year. Riot has 17,000 Bitcoin. They were down 34% last year. So you can't say the market priced in their Bitcoin. No, the market sold these off because they didn't say the magic words. The words that Core Scientific said, the words that TeraWulf said, the words that BitDeer said, which is AI. These went up on speculation. TeraWulf in particular, and listen, I know some members made a fortune on TeraWulf, and I'm glad that you guys did, but understand, if you look at their performance, and I'm going to go to that chart right now. So here's what everybody did in January of 2025. There's still 3 companies that have not reported their January operational, and that is BitDeer, TeraWulf, and BitDigital. So for TeraWulf, you got to go back to last month. 158 Bitcoin mined. Right? You're looking at Marathon 890. So TeraWulf was up 150%. Marathon was down 30%. So they're not pricing this in. TeraWulf did not go up based on the fact that they're in 9th place out of the 12 Bitcoin miners that we follow as far as the number of Bitcoin that they mine per month. That's not why their stock went up 150%. It's on the speculation that they're going to get big, high-performance computing. And I think that I think a lot of these companies will get those contracts. But is that going to be as good as, because at the end of the day, here's what people care about. Did they make money? CleanSpark just made a fortune in this quarter. And that is what the market cares about. So the companies that have those giant hodls, now Iron is going to report next week. They have no hodl position. What they do have is an extremely low cost per coin and a gigantic fleet, and they mined a lot of Bitcoin. So I think you're going to see really nice numbers from Iron. They won't compare to this because they don't have that hodl position, but I think you're going to see really nice numbers from Iron. So and you know, like I said, I'm not sure, they may already be getting a pop from that, because if we go year to date this year, Iron's up 27%. So here's this year to date. So let's look at the flip side. Let's look at what the hodl companies are doing this year. Here's CleanSpark up 23%, Riot up 14%. That's 3rd place and 4th place. And then you've got Hut in the green and Marathon. So there's your hodls, right? They're in the top half of the list this year, not the bottom half of the list. Cypher's up 29%. They're still just crushing it. Iron, like I said, they're about to announce earnings. They're up 27% this year. So I don't know if a good earnings report is already priced in, because Bitcoin's up 3% this year. Iron's up 27% this year. This over here, This kind of stuff is what we want to see from our Bitcoin miners. Now, to be fair, Core Scientific, Wolf, and Bitdeer was up 51% in December. So, okay, they're down 23% in January. They're not even back to where they were at the beginning of December of 2024. Core and Scientific were the number 1 and 2 performers of the year last year. If we go back, they were up 153 and 136% last year. So far year to date, they've given 11% of that back. That's a very small pullback. So that doesn't concern me. I do think most of these stocks are going to continue to run. But I think the Hodl stocks are going to wait till you see Marathon's financial statements with, they bought a lot of those in the fourth quarter, but they had 25,000 Bitcoin that they're going to get a giant markup on. So, we're going to see some good financial statements. And if today was any indicator, on a day that Bitcoin was down, CleanSpark was up 9% on their day they reported their earnings. I feel like that is a sign of things to come. I think that's a good sign. I remain optimistic. So I understand, a lot of you are in I'll believe it when I see it mode, because we have been waiting much longer than I expected. This is way longer than I expected. I thought the Bitcoin miners would be at much higher numbers right now. So I freely admit that on every stream. This is taking longer than I thought it was going to take. But I don't think the destination has changed. I think the time frame is changing. Somebody's saying extended cycle. So I know there's an awful lot of talk about this being a much longer cycle and it going through some or all of the year 2026 potentially. Typically, you would see this 4-year cycle, the peak would be somewhere in the middle of this year, 2025. So, we double topped the last time around in April and then again in November. So somewhere between those two dates, in my opinion, would be the peak of this run. But we could see it sustain because there are, George talked about a Bitcoin reserve for the U.S. So I want to bring up an article because the United States is not the only one talking about Bitcoin reserves. Okay, forget other countries. I think by the time we're through the next 4-year cycle, every major economy on earth is going to have a Bitcoin reserve. That's my opinion. They may have other crypto reserves beyond that, but they'll all have a Bitcoin reserve, in my opinion. U.S. Bitcoin reserve may be coming, but the states are winning the race. So you've got 16 states. 16 states are considering active legislation to put public money into digital assets, and 3 others are potentially poised to join them. That's 19 states looking to start stockpiling Bitcoin. That's crazy. That's in addition to the federal government. And remember, these states have a lot of money. The state pension funds some of them are enormous. So the amount of adoption we've gotten has been tremendous and exciting, but the amount of adoption left ahead far exceeds the adoption that's already happened. So I do think we've reached, a critical mass. We've reached a certain point where it's now, you've got there's nobody in any government anymore that's talking about, well, crypto's going away. Right? Jerome Powell, chairman of the Fed, said cryptocurrency is its own asset class. It is now generally accepted. Crypto is here. It's here to stay. Is there going to be regulations? Yes. Are there going to be winners and losers? Of course. But crypto's here to stay. And I think Bitcoin has such first mover advantage, in addition to the fact that it just has some core properties that I think it will always be. It's bigger than all the rest of the other coins put together. And I think that, it's always, a lot of people think there are coins that will catch up and pass that. I think Bitcoin will maintain that position, for the indefinite future. Two other states have.
What does that mean? Indefinite future. Just explain that to me.
I think for I think for the next 20 years, you're going to see Bitcoin be. You can't. I don't think it's reasonable to say forever. I don't. Who knows what this world looks like 100 years from now. But I think for the next 20 years, Bitcoin has such a first mover advantage on this. And like I said, inherently, I think it has some principles that, it is digital gold. And, let me put it this way. If somebody 2,000 years ago said, I think gold's going to be the standard for a long time, they'd have been right for 2,000 years. So Bitcoin is being called the digital gold, and I think it has a chance of, doing that type of thing.
Digital gold.
So this is one example. Here's 16 states plus 3 others considering. 2 others have already dipped small portions of their retirement portfolios into the crypto exchanges.
Dude, I never even thought of that.
Some of the timelines in the state bills would have them buying Bitcoin and other assets, quote, very soon. Potentially well before any national level reserve can get started. And I think you're going to see a national reserve stockpile, whatever it ends up being called, in 2025. I think there's a super, super high probability of that happening. And I think it could happen in the first half of 2025. So, and that doesn't count all the other countries around the world that I think are going to be getting into this game, some of which are already in this game. There's countries where Bitcoin's their currency. Let's go back to, let's just take a look at what people did in January. So this is just a topside review. I will do a deeper dive, and I slice up these reports in a lot more detail. But just from a topside standpoint, Marathon's having a little bit of a rough time. They went from 890 Bitcoin in December to 750. That's a 16% move to the downside. But I will tell you, you're seeing, based on what happened overall to the network, -6, -5, -6. So I think about -5 or 6 is going to be par for the course in January. Marathon did a little worse, and they said they had to do some curtailment, and they're moving some machines around. But still, even with this pullback, they're by far in first place. They did not grow. They went from 53.2 exahash to 53.2 exahash. So the one thing I will say about January, and this is a part of the process of these at the market, dilution slowing down. Look at the growth. This is the growth in November. The 12 companies that we followed added almost 21 exahash just in the month of November. And that's this number in light blue right here, if you guys can see that. 21 in the month of November, 18.3 exahash in the month of December, and here in January, we're at 4. Now, there's a few companies left to report, but I think that they will be very small, so I think, we're going to be at 5. So that's a dramatic decrease. Now, a lot of these companies still have a lot of growth plans, so I'm not saying we're done growing, but I think you're going to see slow, steady growth. We know CleanSpark plans on getting from 40 to 50. Iron plans on getting from 30 to 50. Hive by the end of the year, or maybe beginning of next year, plans on getting from their current 6 exahash up to 25. 25 exahash. Hut just put a huge orders in for miners. So I'll tell you, there's a couple of these. If you look at Core Scientific, this is 2 months in a row, their exahash rate went down. I think this is what you can expect out of Core Scientific. They have a Bitcoin mining fleet. That's not the core of their business. They did some rebranding. No, actually, it was Bit Digital that did some rebranding. We'll talk about them as well, because there's three. There's actually three. You're going to see Core Scientific went down month over month, 2 months in a row. HUT went down 2 months in a row. So until these new machines come in, HUT has dramatically decreased their exahash. So they have been moving in the wrong direction. And that's why I said it took a while for me to get my pulse on what was going on with HUT this year. I thought maybe they were out of the Bitcoin mining altogether. But in recent months, it appears they're just letting their existing fleet dwindle away, and they're going to buy all new machines, and they are going to gear back up. BitDeer, I think, is out. I mean, they were at 2.5 exahash last month. They're at 1.8 exahash this month. So I don't know why that number's not in there. But they seem... No, that's 1.8 last month. So that was last month. They moved from November to December. They moved from 2.5 down to 1.8, and they have not yet reported in the month their January operation. So it seems to me BitDigital is giving up, and I just want to go very quickly to a press release they put out, if I can find it here. Okay, BitDigital announces strategic rebranding of its high-performance computing business to White Fiber. So they're rebranding themselves now as White Fiber.
Who is?
This is BitDigital, BTBT. It's been a long road with BitDigital. There was a short report put out 4 years ago that this was a fake company. They didn't even really exist, that their management was on the run. And, they never really did get to any of their goals that they've ever talked about. At the beginning of 2024, they said they were going to look to get to 6 exahash by the end of the year. They're at 1.8 exahash at the end of the year. To be fair, in the middle of the year, they said, nope, we're not doing it. So I think BitDigital is out of the Bitcoin mining business. They have now rebranded their high-performance computing business to White Fiber, and I think that is how they're going to be known going forward. So they say rebranding our high-performance business to White Fiber is an important step in establishing a distinct identity for this transformative venture. White Fiber represents the convergence of cutting-edge technology and seamless connectivity, underscoring our commitment to delivering vertically integrated high-performance computing solutions. By combining data center and co-location with GPU cloud services, we provide the high-performance infrastructure required for the most demanding AI workloads. So I think this is who they are trying to become. And I think ultimately by the end of this year, we follow 12 Bitcoin miners. I think we're probably going to drop BitDigital off the list. I don't think they're interested in mining Bitcoin anymore. I'm not ready to drop them just yet. Drop in the chat whether you think they're done, or maybe we'll just do a quick poll. Just a quick yes or no. And I don't know how many of you are invested in this company. And I'm not saying that what they're doing is wrong or bad or that it's going to fail. I'm just saying I don't think they're going to be in Bitcoin mining. There's just every indication that they're giving, including that press release just came out. I mean, they're rebranding their name. So I think they want to distance themselves from some really negative stuff that's out there in the past on BTBT and move forward as something new. And Crypto Golfer saying, honestly, if they go 100% high performance computing, then good for them. It'll probably make the stock go up. And you're probably right. And that's why I think that is what they're doing. Brett was saying BTBT was dead on arrival. So it was a good swing trade a couple of times. But yeah, they just never really got where they said they were planning on going. And you can see at this point why my concern. I had concern for HUT. I thought the same thing about HUT. They mined 65 Bitcoin in January. This is a company that was mining 400 Bitcoin. Now, that was prior to the halving, so if you cut that in half, it's 200. But still, 65 Bitcoin when you've got, what used to be their peers mining 200, 250, 521, 527, 600, 700, and they're at 65. You got companies mining 10 times the amount of HUT when HUT used to be a peer of those companies and mine very similar or more than some of these companies 3 years ago. So they took a 3-year pause from Bitcoin mining. They're at 5 exahash, and they really haven't bought a machine in 3 years, but they do have purchase orders in to start to grow that side of their business significantly. So I think they're jumping back in, and we'll see. We'll see how it serves them. See, George, Sour Melon Gaming said, being able to see George's face on the streams always puts me in a good mood. There you go.
You're so funny.
Made one person smile today, you win.
Yes, I win. There is another crypto person out there. Well, no, he's a Bitcoin miner person, telling everybody to sell XRP.
Oh, really?
Anybody can, any bank can make their own crypto, and this is no big deal. Guess they've never been in banking before.
And Microstrategy to $3,650 is saying BTBT just took a delivery of a batch of ASIC miners. So they didn't put out a press release for that, I don't think. And if they did, it was small. And again, they flat out said, we planned on at the beginning of the year, they were 3 exahash. They planned on getting to 6 exahash. In the middle of the year, they said, we're not doing it. So I'm not sure what that load was. We'll take a look and see.
Tom?
Yep.
Jay asked a question that we haven't even spoke of, which is kind of in shock because you always usually talk about it.
It's my go-to.
Bitfarms. Thoughts on Bitfarms?
Well, thank you for asking. My first thought is if you guys want more information on Bitfarms, I just put out a video a couple of days ago with a deep dive on Bitfarms because I think they have a lot going on. I understand some of it's good, some of it's not great. I am optimistic on Bitfarms, so I'm going to go and I'll hit some of the highlights here.
Tom loves Bitfarms, Jay. You got him going. Just remember, everybody, blame Jay.
My conviction for Bitfarms is less than it was a year ago. It just is. I've actually added some options and added to my position. So I've dollar cost averaged in all year last year and bought some options. So it's not that I've by no means given up on them, but I will say they lost a lot of credibility and they had a lot of problems in 2024. They said for 9.5 or 10 months, they said they were going to get to 21 exahash by the end of 2024. And then they said, at the last, what I would call the last minute, they said, we are not going to get there. We're going to get there. We're going to get to 21 exahash at June 30th, 2025. Well, that's 6 months later. Now, in this press release, they're saying we're not even going to get there by June 30th. We're going to get to 18 exahash by June 30th, 2025. Now, I'm glad they told us that right away. It looks to me as soon as they figured that out, they're now letting us know. And that's what I want as an investor. I don't want to hear 20 press releases in a row talk about how you're on track to get to 21 exahash and then end up at 12.8 exahash, which is where they ended the year, well short. Now, that is not a 97% increase in their exahash. They came in 5th place out of all the Bitcoin miners. They grew their exahash in 5th place, the 5th most of all the Bitcoin miners. So while they did fall wildly short of what they said they were going to do, they did what they needed to do, which is we had a halving and they doubled their exahash, up 97%, just short of double. So So you gotta put those things in balance. Now, the reason I think this is really good news is now here in January for the first time, because they've been stagnant. They reported 12.8 exahash a couple of months in a row, not much growth for about a 4-month period. Well, now they got their operational hash rate up to 15.2 exahash. So if we go back and look, right, if you look at Bitfarms, they still mined over 200 Bitcoin. So that still puts them, they're, when I reshuffle these, they'll be in 7th place. But they're, way ahead of these other companies. And more importantly, they added 2.4 exahash in the month of January. Now, a lot of that, they didn't get to run in the month of January. So, and I don't know how, less and less of their portfolio is in Canada. There's a lot of curtailment that goes on in, January, February, March in Canada. But I'm going to get back to their, because that goes right to this point. Let's see. Energized 2 North American sites in Sharon, Pennsylvania, and Baie-Comeau, Quebec. A lot of what they talk about in this press release is, and more so if you look at their latest investor presentation package, they talk over and over and over about growing their presence in the United States. And I don't have that chart up, but Canada was 52% of their operations last year. They plan on next year Canada being 6% of their operations. They plan on the US being 80%. So they want to be a US company. I believe they're going to change their domicile to the United States from Canada. And I will tell you, I think it's going to make a big difference. I just want to go look at something, because if you go back to 2024, HUT was up 54% last year. In a year where, they're coming off of a merger of equals that literally nobody liked. And you can revise history however you wanted. We did polls. There was not one person that believed that was a merger of equals. The consensus was this was a disaster. Their Bitcoin mining operations went down month after month after month. But actually, if you look at what happened over the course of the year, their performance as a company was actually pretty decent financially. And the fact that they moved from Canada to the US, they are now, so I'm going to go, let me find. If I look at HUT, and this is the express reason they did it. Who's the number 1 and 2 holders in HUT? BlackRock and Vanguard. 7.2% and 6.6%. Those companies did not own any HUT when they were a Canadian company. They bought all of this when they moved to the United States, or the vast majority of this. So if you look at the Canadian companies, if I go to Bitfarms, no BlackRock, no Vanguard, nowhere, not even on the list, right? 0.7. So we know that Vanguard and BlackRock own somewhere between 0 and less than 0.7% of Bitfarms. So if they would just move themselves to the United States, and there's a couple of other things they got to do, not just that, obviously they need to perform, their stock needs to perform, but you're going to see, I believe you'll see what happened to HUT happen to Bitfarms. But they got to take that step. And the fact that in their investor presentation and in every single press release they put out, they talk about growing their presence in the United States. So I think they're giving us, so it's pure speculation on my part. They have not said they're going to do this, but it just feels like there's a lot of signals they're sending out to let us know that that's where they're headed. So you can see they went from 12.8 exahash to 15.2 exahash. they went from 211 to 201. That was down 5 or 6%. But like I said, I think you're going to see that's going to be business as usual for most of these Bitcoin miners. 15.2 exahash is a 19% month-over-month increase and 134% year-over-year increase. So we talked about keeping up with that halving. Well, now they've more than doubled.
Tom.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
When
go
you're
ahead.
done with them, I was going to ask you about one other company.
Okay.
It will probably take us to the close.
All right.
I can imagine I'm going to get everybody going when I say it. You ready?
Yeah, I mean that's what I have to say about Bitfarms. I'm still in. I still believe. I do think they had trouble. Right? They changed CEOs. They fired their CEO. That was a sticky situation. They've had multiple changes at management. They had a hostile takeover attempt in the middle. They are redefining their company. I think you're going to see a lot less stock dilution. They've scaled back their exahash goals, I believe, in an effort to manage cash. They sold their operations in Paraguay. That's going to generate $85 million in cash. So I think they're looking to stop diluting their stock. They don't want to dilute their stock at $1.40. They don't want an at-the-market offering at $1.40. This stock should be, for me, they said no to a buyout at $2.30. What do you think they think about $1.40? So I'm waiting for this stock to get back to $2 or $3 or $4. And I don't think they should do very much stock diluting until they get at least back to $2. So I think they've taken a different strategy. Let's get to our 21 exahash. Let's do it efficiently with the money and resources that we have. Let's prove to the investment community that we're back on track and we're doing what we say we're doing. So I think that's their journey between now, and June 30th. So we'll see. If they fail to do so, then I'll be wrong. But I think you're going to see them do that. I have a lot of confidence in Ben, and I know he was put in a tough spot, and a lot of people are mad at him. But it is hard stepping in to a vacancy from a fired CEO and into a middle of a hostile takeover scenario. And all those things have pummeled their stock. So I think it remains way undervalued, in my opinion, not financial advice. What do you got, George?
Microstrategy. Do you think they're going to
thank
do
you.
extremely well this year?
Perfect question to close on because they reported earnings. Definitely wanted to talk about that. So I'm going to close this out. Is Bit Digital getting out of the Bitcoin mining business? 66% think yes. 34% think no. So we will see. I will keep them on the list. We'll look into a couple people mentioned they just bought some machines. So let's see when they put out their monthly operational report, what they're doing, and if they give us some information that maybe leads us to believe they're not leaving this space. We'll see what happens. Microstrategy. So this, where they ended up, they were doing better than that all day, but they ended up just a little bit. Just let's get back to the Bitcoin chart. So as of the close of the business, so this was the closing 15-minute candle. You can see Bitcoin stopped its fall and it's going sideways. I think what this tells me is we're going to see the ETFs had a lot of outflows today because this was literally from the opening candle to the closing candle. We moved down all day, and then immediately at the close, we stopped. So I think that's what you're going to see. And we're still well within our normal range. But back to MicroStrategy. So they kind of finished even on a day when Bitcoin was down. They presented earnings yesterday, and I have two different articles. Okay, so yeah, MicroStrategy is rebranding as Strategy. So I'm sure it's going to take me a long time to stop calling them MicroStrategy. I'll just forewarn everybody. It always takes me an adjustment period. It's like changing from 2024 to 2025. I'm still right in the wrong year for a month. So they are now Strategy, not MicroStrategy. So
Strategy.
This article says MicroStrategy rebrands posts major loss and pauses Bitcoin buying spree. So I think this headline's a little misleading. They went 1 week. This week, they announced they didn't buy any Bitcoin last week. The week before that, they bought like 10,000. The week before that, they bought 11,000. So the week before earnings, they didn't buy any. We'll see what happens next week. But we already know. They've already told us they have, billions and billions and billions of dollars planned of more purchases of Bitcoin. So we know they're not done. And this last year, they bought a tremendous amount of Bitcoin. So Bitcoin Play MicroStrategy announced a rebrand and a new company name ahead of its Q4 earnings miss late Wednesday. And we're going to talk about its earnings miss. This article doesn't talk about it at all, so I think that's where they're missing the mark. The software service provider and corporate Bitcoin treasury has been on a cryptocurrency buying spree and recently announced plans to raise even more funding. So this article talks a lot about their software business. Let's all be honest. Their software business was about $1 billion business for decades. This is a 80 to $100 billion company now. Their software business is irrelevant. It doesn't move. It's not moving their stock one way or the other. It is an insignificant portion of what this company does. This is now a proxy on Bitcoin, period. Right? They own 471,000 Bitcoin. That is the most any company in the world owns. And by the way, in second place is Marathon at around 45,000, 1/10 the amount that MicroStrategy holds. So this is a Bitcoin company. So they reported a loss of $3 per share. That was a big miss, but here's the bottom line. Analysts polled expected a loss of 9 cents a share. It ended up being $3 a share. And they talk about 122 million in revenue. Again, their revenue is from their side of their business that is not relevant. It's just nobody cares about it anymore. It's got nothing to do with the stock price. So if I go to this article, this gives you a little more of what's going on. MicroStrategy reports massive Q4 loss amid Bitcoin expansion. Strategy, which is Strategy reported a GAAP operating loss of $1 billion with non-GAAP operating losses of just under $1 billion, primarily due to $1.006 billion in digital asset impairment losses. So instead of adopting the new FASB rules and marking their Bitcoin up, they actually marked it down $1 billion. So on paper, it looks like this company had an awful quarter. But this is all paper. So they say our reported impairment losses are a reflection of the volatile nature of digital assets, not a fundamental weakness in our business model. But it goes on to say, let me find the other. Shift to fair value accounting. Starting in Q1 of 2025, Strategy, which is MicroStrategy, adopted FASB fair value accounting, which will allow the company to mark its Bitcoin holdings to market value each quarter instead of recording impairments when prices decline, which is what they did this quarter in order to write off $1 billion and show a giant loss. This accounting change is expected to bring more transparency to Bitcoin valuation on its balance sheet. So,
do you know if MicroStrategy has what's called wrapped Bitcoin?
They have not disclosed that. Their holdings, they have 471,107 Bitcoin. That is what they raise money and buy. I don't know if they have an insignificant amount of other digital assets, but this is a straight Bitcoin play.
Well, wrapped Bitcoin is, a straight Bitcoin play.
But it's not Bitcoin.
I think there's some way that it is Bitcoin.
I'm just saying they report we bought this many. They own 471,107 Bitcoin. That's what this company has done. And they're in it at an average cost of $64,000. Bitcoin's at $95,000 right now, and they get to take a $1 billion write-off to mark their Bitcoin down. So you can see, like, that was last call. They've already adopted in Q1 of this year the new FASB rules. So you're going to see them. I mean, their next quarter is going to be insanity. So that's why this company didn't crash on these bad earnings. They were pretty flat. My concern with MicroStrategy has more to do with their price earning. This is an $82 billion company. Their price book. Current 4.5. I don't know why they're saying that, but price sales 135. That's not relevant. If we go to their financial statements, this says 4.5, but that's not correct. They traded a lot higher valuation to book value than the Bitcoin miners do. Much, much higher valuation. So, because remember, for all these Bitcoin that they buy, and they have made a lot of money, so there is a lot of equity there, but they have a massive amount of convertible debt on their balance sheet as well. And they're going to raise, I think, another $45 billion, half of it in convertible debt, half of it in at-the-market offerings, and they're going to buy Bitcoin with all of that money. So, you want to talk about stock dilution. So I am a little worried. I built out a position in MicroStrategy. I don't know. There's two groups of people out there. There's the group of people that think this is going to 10x from here, and there's the group of people that think this has already run too hard and is going to have a pullback. And I'm very torn. So let's make that our last poll, and we'll call it.
I mean, doesn't it really just depend on where Bitcoin goes?
Well, that's going to be a factor, but I'm saying, so it should get a run either way, but is it going to be held back because it's already had such a massive run? It outperformed the Bitcoin miners dramatically in 2024. It was up 400 or 500% versus the Bitcoin miners, which, half of them were down in 2024. One more second. Okay, so what's everybody think MicroStrategy is going to do? And I put 4 choices. To the moon, is this thing going to just keep running like wild? Or is it just going to go up and have a nice year? Not crazy. Or is it going to go down? Or is it going to crash? What do we think is going to happen to MicroStrategy? Let's see what people think. And I'm very conflicted on this one. I haven't sold my position. I own it. This is one I'm really trying to rethink and see if I maintain a high level of conviction in this. And whatever it takes says, that's my concern. MicroStrategy has destroyed even the best miners over the past year. That horse can only run so fast for so long. So that's exactly what I'm looking at. And, a short report came out on them. Their stock was over $500. I think, what did it hit? 500. We look here, $543. That was in the middle of the day. On that day, a short report came out on MicroStrategy and basically said this stock's going to have a massive, massive pullback. So that was, and the stock did have a huge pullback on that day. So You know, it was down $150 or something on that day from its peak. And, you know, it's still down a couple of $100 from where it was a couple of months ago. The question is it going to recover? Is it going to get that back and keep running? Or is that person right and they're way overvalued? And I will tell you, I do have one other person that I watch on YouTube that has a big following, you know, 100,000 plus subscribers, who he said his number one trade for 2025 is to short MicroStrategy. So I was pretty shocked when I watched that video. I disagree with him, but that's the debate that's going on out there, I guess, would be my point.
I don't know if I disagree. Don't you think it's going to come more into line with their holdings?
Yeah, it's trading at big multiples. So I'm worried, yes. I mean, the option I didn't put on there, because they only let me put 4 options on there, is go sideways. And I just get this feeling maybe this one's going to go sideways in 2025. I don't see it crashing. But I no longer think that it's necessarily going to do what some of the Bitcoin miners didn't get their turn yet. I feel like these guys got a big part of their turn. But I am conflicted, as you can see. I haven't made up my mind, so I haven't touched my position. MicroStrategy to 3650 said, Tom, your information on MicroStrategy is terrible. At the market, they already have used 18 million. They're talking about $45 billion. So I would just look you to go check that for yourself. But and you can, everybody, please double check. If you're ever going to invest, don't listen to me. Go double check anything that I say. You know, it's hard. I read an awful lot of stuff on all this stuff. So I'm sure what I'm saying on here is not always 100% accurate. Craig, thank you. Craig said, thanks for all your work and info, Tom and George. Thank you, Craig, and thanks for being a member. What's MicroStrategy going to do in 2025? So far, it looks like pretty much a landslide. People think it's going to go up. Go up 57%, go to the moon. Jumped up to 24%. 0 people think it's going to crash. And 21% think it's going to go down. So almost 80-20 are bullish on MicroStrategy, or as they now want to be referred to, strategy. So, any other thoughts? I feel like we covered. Let's go take a look at what Bitcoin's doing. So, since the market closed, we're just hanging out sideways. We'll see what happens over the weekend.
Well, have a great weekend, everyone.
Any parting thoughts, or just that's it?
Go Philadelphia.
As Bills fans, we are obligated.
What about that statement, cheaters never win?
Brett, thank you for the super chat. Tom, here you go. 1 share of CleanSpark. Let's pray these shit turds turn around. Have a great weekend. Thank you, Brett. That was very, very generous and thoughtful. And
1 share of...
My parting thought will be CleanSpark put out their earnings. They killed it. Their stock went way up today on a day that Bitcoin was down. I think there's more of that to come. I'm optimistic. I'm not saying everything's going to the moon tomorrow, but I remain optimistic. So with that said, thank you, Brett. Thank you to all the members. Thank you to everybody that joined us. Thank you, George. Everybody
Tom.
You're welcome. Everybody have a fantastic weekend. And to the members, we will see you on Tuesday. And to everybody else, we're here every Friday to talk about Bitcoin, the Bitcoin miners, and whatever else is going on in the world. So have a great weekend. Thanks.